Hello and welcome to the channel, and I'm here for a ranking video for you guys. Now for this ranking, I'll be ranking the studio discography from the band Yes. Now Yes is definitely one of my favorites in the whole progressive rock movement, and definitely a great band, and we do know that Yes has a new album in the works. We don't know when it's coming, but we do know that it's coming eventually. Now of course, for this ranking, we'll be going from worst to best, and I understand that some placements of my ranking may be controversial for some people, and that's okay. If your ranking is different than mine, that's totally fine with me, of course. We'll be going from worst to best. Now, keep in mind, the bottom two that I have in this ranking, I actually don't have in my collection yet. I will probably eventually collect them just for the sake of collecting the entire Yes discography, but yeah, we'll of course start off with those, and obviously there's a reason why I don't have those albums yet, because, well, again, I think that those are some of their weakest material. So let's go ahead and start off with those. Now at the bottom of the ranking, I gotta go with Open Your Eyes. Yeah, this one might not surprise some people, because I know that this album is at the bottom of the ranking for a lot of people. This album kind of sees Yes trying to go back to their more commercial, more mainstream roots, I guess you could say, and it didn't really pay off that well, I think. And I think it's easily their worst album, but it's not the worst thing that I've ever heard, obviously. So Open Your Eyes, it's got to be at the bottom for me. And the album after that, which I also don't have once again, Heaven and Earth. Now, my problem with this album is it's just not very memorable. It's not a very memorable album, and there's just other Yes albums that I'd very much rather listen to. So yeah, these are obviously the only two that I don't have in my collection yet, but they got to be at the bottom of the ranking for me. So let's go ahead and move on to what's next in the ranking. Next, Fly From Here. Now, my issue with this album is it just kind of lacks replay value. Just songs that really don't do it for me as much, I guess you could say. Not a terrible album, but it's easily one of their worst. But it does have the song Madman at the Screens, which I think is a pretty good track. I mean, it's not one of Yes's best songs or anything, but I do like it though. I do think it's good, and to me, that's really the only song that's really worth returning to from this album. But the album as a whole, kind of boring in some sections, but it's obviously not all bad though. So Fly From Here, it's definitely one of their worst. I mean, when it comes to the top 5 weakest Yes albums, that's kind of easy to determine for me anyway. But next in the ranking, we got Talk. Now, the thing is with this album for me is there's just better Yes albums out there. I mean, anytime I'm in the mood to listen to Yes, I'm usually not thinking, wow, yeah, Talk, that'll do. No. There's just other Yes material that I'd very much rather listen to than this album. But Talk, I mean, it's got some good songs. I mean, The Calling, which is the opening track, that's a pretty good song. Now, the rest of the album, it's not bad, but I don't think it's terrible either. But it's just not very memorable, I guess. So yeah, Talk, not bad, but not one of their best. Next in the ranking, The Ladder. Now, I think that this is the second best of their 90s work. This album does have some good songs on it, such as Homeworld and Lightning Strikes. Those are both very good songs, I think. The rest of the album, not bad, but also nothing worth writing home about either. So yeah, The Ladder, I think it's decent. Next in the ranking, Magnification. Not sure how some people will feel about me ranking this album higher than The Ladder and Talk, or even Fly From Here, but I mean, any song that has the title track, I mean, I think this album alone, I mean, for that song, for that purpose alone, I think it's better than the albums that I mentioned previously, because I actually really like the title track to this album a lot. I mean, I think it's maybe the best song of their modern era, at least the best song that they've done of the 2000s, I guess. So yeah, definitely great track though. Now, as for the other songs, not bad, but I mean, kind of like with the latter, not bad, but I mean, some songs are good, some songs are just not very memorable, I guess. So yeah, I mean, but the title track, man, title track's a really great track. If you haven't listened to that one in a while, I highly recommend you return to that one. But yeah, decent album. Next in the ranking, Union. Now, to me, I think that this is the best of their 90s work, but this album still does have its problems. My main issue with this album is it just has some filler to it. This album, I think, has a lot of filler to it, actually. I mean, was it really necessary to make this album 14 tracks? Not really, in my opinion, but yeah, I mean, this album does have some good songs on it, like I Would Have Waited Forever. That's a really great track, actually. Lift Me Up is another great song. Miracle of Life, not too bad. Of course, the song Anchor Watt, if that's how you say it. That's a more experimental song. It's kind of different for the band, and I mean, I think it's pretty good. I think it's, I can appreciate the experimentation that went into that song, but yeah, Union, it's obviously not one of their best, but I don't think it's bad either. I think it's a decent album, but it just has too much filler to it, and that's really my main complaint with the album, but for what it is, it's not all bad. Next in the ranking, Big Generator. To me, this album is easily the weakest of their 80s material, but it's not bad, though. I still think it's a pretty decent album. Now, this album does have songs like Rhythm of Love and Shoot High, Aim Low, which are both very good songs. But again, not a bad album, but to me it's easily the weakest of Yes's 80s work. Next in the ranking, Thermado. This album, kind of a divisive album in the Yes fan base. I know that there's people that really hate this album. There's some people that like it as well. For me, I'm more in the middle with this album. I don't think the album is all bad. I mean, it does have some good songs, though, like Future Times and Rejoice, the opening track. Great track. You also got songs like Don't Kill the Whale, which is also a great song. I think Onward's pretty cool, too, but yeah. Thermado, not one of their best, but it's not all bad, though. Next in the ranking, the debut album. Decent debut. This album does have some good songs, of course, like Yesterday and Today, Looking Around, and Survival. Survival is probably my favorite song on the album. I really dig that song a lot. So the debut album, I think a lot of people can agree that it's not one of their best, but it's not all bad, though. I mean, it's pretty good. Next in the ranking, Time in a Word. Yeah, definitely a great album for sure. Not one of their best, but I do think it's good, though. I mean, from this point on, you're just getting absolutely solid material from Yes, for sure. So, but Time in a Word, their second album, I mean, it's really good. I mean, it's not one of their best, but I do like it, though. I mean, it does have the title track, which is a great song for sure. So, Time in a Word. Next in the ranking, we got Drama. I know that there's some people that say that this is the best of their 80s work, but obviously it's not, in my opinion, it's not the best of their 80s work, but it's my second favorite of their 80s material. But this album, it's pretty good. I mean, it's of course a really great album, and it's a classic. I mean, you got Machine Messiah, Does It Really Happen, Tempest Fugit, great track. I mean, Tempest Fugit, I think, is maybe one of the best songs of their 80s work. But yeah, so Drama, it's kind of underrated too. Definitely a very good album. But obviously, I don't think it's their best work. Next in the ranking, I'm going to have to go with Tales from Topographic Oceans. Definitely an ambitious and unique album for them too. This album just has 4 epics on it, and I mean, that's really all that it needs. Now, when it comes to songs that are that long, sometimes they can be very hit or miss. You know, given these song lengths, of course, but yeah, I mean, for what the album is, I think it's very good, though, and I can appreciate what went into this album and the ambition and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, of course, you got songs like the Remembering the Ancient, Ritual. I mean, a lot of solid material on here, even though I don't think it's their best. Now, I would say, if you were to ask me which album I think is Yes's most overrated album, probably would have to go with this one. But that's not saying much because I still think it's a very good album. But next in the ranking, I'm going to have to go with Relayer. Again, another album that has some solid epics on it. Just really great tracks. Gates of Delirium, Sound Chaser, those songs, I mean, those songs alone are, of course, my reason why this album is ranked as high as it is. I mean, it's definitely a very solid album. So yeah, I do know that there's some people that would rank this at number 1 and even at number 2, but I mean, understandably so. I think it's a very solid album. So next in the ranking, 90125. Now, to me, I think that this is the best of their 80s work. To me, this album just has the best songs of their 80s work, I think. Of course, you got classics like Owner of a Lonely Heart. You got Hold On, It Can Happen, Changes, Our Song. I mean, a lot of really great songs on here. I mean, there's a lot to like about this album. I mean, this album really does, I guess, capture that 80s sound very well. Probably better than they did on Drama, I think. I mean, this album, I think, is definitely a big improvement from Drama, but both the albums are obviously great. So 90125. Next in the ranking, this album has actually moved around a lot within my ranking, but it has always remained in my top 5. That much I know. So next in the ranking, Fragile. Obviously a classic. There's some people that would have this album at number 1, number 2, somewhere in the top 3. It's always been within my top 5 personally. There was a time where it was in my top 3, but it's at number 4 for me. But yeah, definitely a great album for sure. I mean, you got classics like Roundabout, South Side of the Sky, Long Distance Runaround, The Heart of a Sunrise. A lot of great songs. So Fragile, definitely a great album. Next in the ranking at number 3, this album has grown on me tremendously. I mean, I think that this is maybe their most underrated album. And this album just, it has no bad song on it. I mean, I like everything from this album. And the album I am talking about is Going for the One. Definitely a great album for sure. I mean, you can't go wrong with anything from this album. Going for the One, Turn of the Century, Parallels, Wanderous Stories, Awaken. Awaken is maybe one of my favorite Yes songs. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It's excellent. So, Going for the One, I mean, there's obviously a reason why this album is this high in my ranking. I mean, there's just not a single bad track from this album. All the songs are excellent. So, Going for the One. At number 2, I'm going to have to go with the Yes album, which I know some people would place at number 1, but I mean, if you're a Yes fan, how is this album not in your top 3 best Yes album ranking or whatever? This album has some of their best songs as well. I mean, any song that has Yours Is No Disgrace on it, it's got to rank this high in my ranking. I mean, that song, easily one of their best songs. I mean, really, this album, again, has no bad track on it. I mean, when it comes to my top 3 favorite Yes albums, not a weak song, okay? But some favorites of mine from this album would, of course, be Yours Is No Disgrace, Starship Trooper, I've Seen All the Good People, and Perpetual Change. There's a lot of solid tracks on this album. Definitely a classic. Definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of rock music and progressive rock, of course. I mean, if you call yourself a prog rock fan, haven't heard this album yet, check it out. So, the Yes album. Now, we are here at number 1. Number 1 is pretty much a no-brainer for me. This album is a 10 out of 10 album in my opinion, and I am of course talking about Close to the Edge. What a solid album this is. It's obviously a classic. Once again, not a bad song on this album. This album has just 3 epics on it, and you know what? That's really all that it needs. I mean, it's got the song "And You and I" on it, which is maybe my favorite Yes song of all time. Maybe, I'm not sure, but I mean, if it's not my favorite Yes song, then it's easily in my top 5 for sure. But of course, the other songs are really good on here. Siberian, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but you also got the title track. Excellent, just excellent stuff. I mean, all 3 tracks are pretty much top 15 favorite Yes song contenders. I'll say that. So, Close to the Edge, there's just a lot to like about this album. I mean, again, you like progressive rock, you need to check out this album ASAP. So Close to the Edge, that's what's at number 1 for me. It's my favorite Yes album. Well, there you have it. I can't believe I actually ranked the entire Yes discography, so I never thought that that day would come since, well, they do have a lengthy discography, of course, and this is a band that's still ongoing, of course, and let me know what you guys think of my ranking. How would you rank Yes's albums? Feel free to let me know in the comments. So on that note, thanks for watching. Have a nice day and take care.